All right, get ready for a wild ride today because we're diving headfirst into a real historical enigma, a city that seems to have vanished into thin air.
Vanish is right. We're talking about Simhapura.
Simhapura, and luckily you've provided some really intriguing articles to guide us,
Oh,
so
yeah.
hopefully we can
Oh.
crack this case wide open.
What's so fascinating about Simhapura is, it's not just some mythical tale, right?
Right.
We have this little whisper from history.
Mhm.
Just one single mention that's had people buzzing for
It's a
ages.
single breadcrumb.
Yeah,
It's like finding a message in a bottle from the past.
exactly.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's set the stage.
Okay.
We need that historical context.
For sure. You can't talk about Simhapura without talking about the Indus River Basin.
Yeah.
I mean, this place is historically significant. Like, civilizations have been playing musical chairs here for millennia.
Empires rising and falling, trade routes crisscrossing continents, ideas spreading like wildfire.
Wow.
And it's in this historical pressure cooker that Simhapura pops up during the reign of, wait for it, the Kushan Empire.
Ah, the Kushans.
And the Kushans, from what I've gathered, they weren't messing around. They were the top dogs of their time.
You got that right. From the 1st to the 4th century CE, their territory was enormous. I'm talking from Central Asia all the way to the Ganges River.
Wow.
And they weren't just about conquering. They were master connectors, linking east and west through these massive trade networks, like the legendary Silk Road. Think of all the cultural exchange, the flow of goods and ideas.
It boggles the mind. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because we often think of empires as all about brute force, but the Kushan era, this was a golden age.
Oh, absolutely.
Art and culture flourished, and Buddhism, especially Buddhism, found fertile ground under their rule.
Buddhist art and architecture just exploded during this period. Monasteries and stupas, impressive monuments. Some were like giant reliquaries. Others were places for meditation. You'd find them all over the place. And Simhapura, right smack in the middle of this vibrant empire, must have been something to see.
A lost world, a city pulsing with life, a melting pot of cultures and commerce, and then poof, gone.
Gone.
Like a flick of a switch. What happened?
Well, empires, they have a shelf life, don't they? The Kushans, they faced pressure from the Sasanian Empire over in the west, but the real game changer, the ones who really shook things up, were the Huns, who came crashing in around the 4th century.
The Huns, now that's a plot twist. They weren't exactly known for their diplomacy, were they?
Let's just say they weren't there to make friends. Their arrival brought chaos, disruption, cities were left in ruins, and Buddhism, which had been thriving under the Kushans, went into decline. Monasteries abandoned, their former glory fading with time.
A stark reminder of how quickly things can change. Makes you realize even mighty empires are fragile, right? But amidst all this turmoil, a new character enters the scene, someone who, centuries later, would become our sole link to Simhapura. I'm talking about Xuanzang, a 7th century Buddhist monk from China.
Now, this guy was on a mission. He journeyed all the way to South Asia looking for original Buddhist scriptures. Talk about dedication. His writings, the great Tang records of the Western countries. It's like he kept the most detailed travel journal ever.
It's almost like he knew we'd be here centuries later, desperately seeking clues.
Right.
So what did he say about Simhapura? Did he, leave a treasure map tucked into those writings?
Not quite a map, but he did leave us some breadcrumbs. Xuanzang, he got to Simhapura after traveling south from Taxila, which was another major hub at the time, about 140 miles. And get this, he describes it as this large kingdom, even bigger than Taxila. Can you imagine?
Wow, bigger than Taxila. That was like the center of knowledge and trade back then. It really makes you think about how significant Simhapura must have been. So we're talking about a massive, bustling city. What else did Xuanzang have to say? Did he, describe it?
He did. He talks about it being nestled among all these towering cliffs and crags, which would have made it pretty much impenetrable. He also mentions its really harsh climate and that the people who lived there were tough as nails. But even with all that, he still remarked on how much food they managed to grow.
Sounds like something right out of an adventure film, this hidden city tucked away in this rugged, remote landscape.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
But what really got me were those 2 stupas he wrote about.
Ah, the stupas. Remember how I said these were these monumental Buddhist structures?
Right, right.
Well, Xuanzang, he describes one stupa that was south of the city, and get this, he says it was built by Emperor Ashoka himself.
Hold on, Emperor Ashoka. As in the Emperor Ashoka, the big cheese of Buddhist history. To think he had a stupa built in this city. That's incredible.
I know, right? That's a whole other level of mystery and importance to Simhapura, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
And there's another stupa, also to the south. This one sounds even more awe-inspiring. Xuanzang describes this huge stone structure, 200 feet tall, near this network of ponds, all covered in lotus blossoms. It's like stepping back in time.
It's kind of sad, though, because in Xuanzang's descriptions, you can sense this feeling of decline, you know. He mentions that first stupa being damaged, the carvings all defaced, the monastery that was attached to it totally deserted. It's like a glimpse into a faded glory.
It does make you think about the passage of time, doesn't it? The rise and fall of civilizations. The Simhapura that Xuanzang encountered, it was just a shadow of its former self. But luckily for us, he was such a meticulous note-taker, he left a trail for others to follow, even centuries later.
Which brings us to Alexander Cunningham, the Sherlock Holmes of archaeology.
Exactly. Jump ahead to the 19th century. In Cunningham, armed with Xuanzang's writings, he makes it his mission to find Simhapura. He pores over every single detail, every description, every direction, using it all as his guide.
This is like a real-life treasure hunt, isn't it? So what did Cunningham dig up?
Well, using Xuanzang's descriptions as his guide, Cunningham, he figured Simhapura might be located at a place called Katas Raj, which is in present-day Pakistan. It's got temples and holy ponds, which seem to fit with what Xuanzang had written about.
Okay, so Katas Raj is our first contender. Sounds promising. But was there anything that made him doubt it?
Well, Cunningham was incredibly thorough, and he noticed a discrepancy. See, the distance between Taxila and Katas Raj, it didn't quite match up with the distances Xuanzang recorded. It just didn't add up.
It's always those little things, isn't it? One minute you think you've got it figured out, the next it's back to the drawing board. So if Katas Raj wasn't a perfect match, where did that leave things?
The search didn't stop there, thank goodness. In more recent times, Pakistani archaeologists, they picked up where Cunningham left off. And they've been focusing their efforts on this region called the Salt Range.
Ooh, things are getting interesting. Okay, tell me more. What's in the Salt Range?
Well, they zeroed in on 3 possible sites, each with its own set of clues. Remember Katas Raj?
Yeah.
Well, it's still in the running, but now it's joined by 2 new contenders, Murti and a place called Sharanwali Sarkar.
Ooh, 3 possibilities. I like it. All right, let's unpack this. Katas Raj is still on the table, but what about Murti? What makes it a good candidate for Simhapura?
Murti's interesting because it's got this mix of Buddhist and Hindu heritage. There are remnants of a stupa and a temple there. It points to a place where different cultures and religions all intersected, which would make sense given what we know about the region's history. But here's the real kicker. Up until the 1930s, Murti had these clear water pools.
Wait, water pools? Hang on a second. Didn't Xuanzang say something about ponds being near one of the stupas? Could this be it?
It's definitely possible. It's like a whisper from the past, something that might have seemed insignificant then, but could be the key to unlocking everything now.
Okay, I'm hooked. So we have Katas Raj, still in the running despite the distance issue, and now Murti with these intriguing water pools and blend of cultures. But what about this third site you mentioned, Sharanwali Sarkar? Even the name sounds like it holds some kind of secret.
You're right. The name is pretty significant. Sharanwali, it actually translates to of the lion, which, immediately brings Simhapura to mind, City of the Lion. It's almost as if the name itself is a clue.
Like the city's trying to tell us where it is through history. I love when it all comes together like this. But cool name aside, what else points to Sharanwali Sarkar being Simhapura? It really does. A lion's name for the City of the Lion, it's almost too good to be true. But a name alone can't be enough, right? What else makes Sharanwali Sarkar a serious contender in this historical treasure hunt?
Well, there are 2 things that really make it stand out. First, you got these 2 massive mounds at the site, and they actually resemble early stupas in their shape, their structure, the whole 9 yards.
Right, those grand Buddhist monuments we talked about.
Exactly. And these mounds, they could be the remnants of those ancient structures, just buried under centuries of dirt and dust.
Okay, that's pretty convincing. What about the second thing?
Location, location, location. Remember how Cunningham, he noticed that the distance to Katas Raj didn't quite line up with Xuanzang's writings?
Yeah.
Well, get this. Sharanwali Sarkar, it's situated north of Katas Raj and like northwest of Murti. And if you actually retrace Xuanzang's journey using his descriptions, Sharanwali Sarkar, it actually lines up geographically.
Get out! You're kidding! So if we follow in Xuanzang's footsteps, this site, with its lion name and these possible ancient mounds, it could actually be the lost city of Simhapura.
It's a tantalizing possibility, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
But I do have to throw in a little word of caution here. Until we get out there and do some serious archaeological digging, we're still basically just putting together a puzzle with half the pieces missing, you know?
Right.
We can speculate all we want, analyze every little detail, but we can't know for sure until we get our hands dirty, so to speak.
It's like we're standing right on the edge of this major discovery, but we need that final push, that smoking gun to say for sure, this is it, we found it, so where do we go from here? What happens next?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
We need more digging, literally. We need more research, more exploration. Imagine the things we could find buried there, just waiting to be unearthed after all this time.
It's amazing to think, isn't it, that we're even having this conversation, that we might be this close to rediscovering a city that's been lost for over 1,000 years. It just goes to show history, it's not just something you read about in a textbook, it's alive, you know?
Oh, yeah.
It's full of these unsolved mysteries just waiting for us to uncover them. So we've got these awesome clues, we've got our list of potential locations, but Simhapura is still playing hard to get. What would it mean, though, if we actually found it?
Oh, it would be huge. And I don't just mean the archaeological find itself, although that would be pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Think about what we could learn, though, about the Kushan Empire, about how Buddhism spread, about what life was like along the Silk Road.
We might have to rewrite history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Simhapura is this door, and if we can just figure out a way to open it, who knows what we'll discover on the other side.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? This one lost city, a single mention in some ancient travel journal, and the dedication of these explorers and archaeologists across centuries, it all leads to us here, now, on the verge of a discovery that could change everything. And hey, who knows, maybe someday we'll revisit this conversation, but this time we'll have all the answers. But until then, keep exploring, everybody. And if you stumble across any lost cities in your travels, you know who to call.